Snow fell thick and relentless, muting the narrow street until it felt cut off from the rest of the world. Yellow streetlights flickered through the storm, casting long, shaky shadows against peeling wooden houses. The young mother sat on the broken steps of a cold building, her body curved protectively around her son as if she could shield him from the night itself. The wood beneath her was damp and splintered, seeping through her thin jeans, but she didn't move. She pulled her coat tighter, though it did little to stop the wind that sliced through every gap. Her fingers burned, red, cracked, swollen from hours of scrubbing floors and lifting boxes that never belonged to her. Each breath fogged in front of her face, short and shallow like she was rationing air. Her son shifted on her lap, warm and restless, his small weight the only thing anchoring her. She kissed the top of his hat, inhaling the faint smell of soap and dust, fighting the panic clawing at her chest. Every passing car made her flinch, headlights sweeping over them like accusations. She counted seconds, then minutes, then stopped counting altogether. Christmas lights blinked in distant windows, soft, mocking reminders of homes she no longer had access to. Fear pressed in from all sides, fear of the cold deepening, fear of morning coming too soon, fear of how much longer she could pretend this was temporary. She stared down the street, jaw tight, praying for nothing and everything at once, knowing that tonight survival itself felt fragile. The sound of an engine slowed, deliberate and heavy, cutting through the hush of falling snow. Headlights washed over the street brighter than the others. Too clean, too controlled. The mother's stomach dropped. She recognized that car before it stopped. Black, silent, expensive. Her grip tightened around her son as the vehicle rolled to a halt a few steps away. The door opened, smooth and confident, and her boss stepped out into the cold. His shoes touched the slush without hesitation, leather pristine, coat perfectly pressed. He looked out of place like a sharp line drawn through a blurred picture. Confusion crossed his face first, then something closer to disbelief. This wasn't the version of her he knew. The quiet employee who never complained, who stayed late, who smiled when she was supposed to. She felt exposed, stripped bare by the light. Heat rushed to her face, shame colliding with anger. She lowered her eyes, hoping he wouldn't speak, hoping the night might swallow them both. The distance between them felt immense, more than rank or money, more than the width of the street. It was the distance between someone who could leave and someone who couldn't. Snow gathered on his shoulders as he took a step closer, searching her face, trying to connect the woman from his office to the one sitting on broken steps. Her chest tightened. She braced herself for judgment, for pity, for questions she had no strength left to answer. The street held its breath as they faced each other, both realizing this moment would change something neither of them could control. The boy wriggled free before she could tighten her hold, slipping off her lap with a quiet determination that startled her. "Wait," she whispered, reaching out, but he was already moving. His small boots crunched into the snow, each step brave and uncertain. He clutched his teddy bear to his chest like armor, its ear worn thin from years of being held too tight. The man noticed him too late. His posture shifted, instinctively straightening, authority rising out of habit, then stalling. As the child stopped right in front of him, the boy tilted his head back, eyes wide and shining under the streetlight, studying this tall stranger in a suit like he was someone important, someone who might know how the world worked. The mother's heart slammed. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. She felt suddenly small, powerless, watching her child cross a line she couldn't protect him from. Snow dusted his hat. Her breath caught, fear spiking sharp and fast. The boy lifted his chin, voice soft but steady, untouched by embarrassment or pride. "Sir," he said, carefully choosing the word like it mattered. "Can you tell Santa we moved?" The sentence hung there, fragile and sincere. The street seemed to shrink around it. The man froze, caught mid-breath, as if the child had spoken a language that bypassed all defense. The mother closed her eyes for half a second, pain and love twisting together, knowing there was no way back from what had just been said. The words landed harder than the winter air. The man's face emptied of every practiced expression he owned. No authority, no impatience, no polite distance left to hide behind. His breath stalled in his chest as he looked down at the boy, then slowly up at the mother. For the first time, he wasn't seeing an employee. He was seeing the truth she'd been carrying in silence. The mother felt the impact immediately. Her shoulders stiffened, shame flaring hot beneath the cold. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, a silent plea not to ask, not to dig. Her eyes glistened, but she refused to let tears fall. She had worked too hard to survive to break now. Snow drifted between them, soft and merciless. The boy hugged his teddy tighter, waiting patiently, trusting completely. The man swallowed, his throat dry. The city noise felt far away, like the world had stepped back to watch. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Something unfamiliar pressed against his chest. Guilt, maybe. Or responsibility he'd never earned but could no longer ignore. The distance between them wasn't just money or power anymore. It was knowledge. And it was closing fast. The silence stretched until it felt dangerous, like it might snap. The boy shifted his weight, snow soaking into the knees of his pants, but he didn't step back. He looked up again, urgency creeping into his small voice. "Our old house is gone," he said, matter of fact, as if stating the weather. "Mommy says Santa might not know where we are now." His lip trembled for just a second before he pressed it into a determined smile, trying to be brave for her. The mother's breath broke. She turned her face away, jaw clenched so hard it ached. That was the part she had tried to protect him from. The finality of gone. Not moved, not changed, gone. The words scraped her raw inside. Her hands curled into fists inside her sleeves, nails biting skin to keep herself steady. The man's chest tightened with every word. He followed the boy's pointing hand, slow and disbelieving, to the broken steps, the dark doorway, the nowhere that answered the question he hadn't wanted to ask. Understanding hit him without mercy. There was no address to give Santa, no mailbox, no front door. The boy waited, eyes searching the man's face for reassurance, for magic, for an answer adults were supposed to have. The snow kept falling, heavier now, filling the space between them. The truth settled in, cold and undeniable, and the man realized this wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a quiet emergency, unfolding right in front of him. The man moved for the first time since the truth landed, bending his knees as if gravity had suddenly doubled. He crouched slowly in front of the boy, the fabric of his expensive coat creasing, the cold biting through trousers never meant for nights like this. Power drained from his posture with the motion. He was no longer towering. He was level. His voice came out rough, stripped of polish. "Where did you move to?" The question sounded simple, but it carried the weight of everything he was finally willing to see. He asked it gently, afraid of the answer. The boy didn't hesitate. He lifted his arm and pointed behind him. At the cracked steps, the dark doorway, the stretch of street that offered no shelter. His finger wavered, then steadied. "Here," he said, one word. Nowhere disguised as somewhere. The man followed the line of that finger and felt something inside him give way. The cold seeped into his knees, but he barely noticed. His throat closed. This was not a place. This was waiting. This was surviving. The mother stood abruptly, as if she couldn't bear to watch anymore. Her body shook, not from the cold alone. She wrapped her arms around herself, caught between pride and desperation, knowing the lie was gone. The street felt too small to hold what had just been revealed, and the silence that followed pressed in like a judgment no one could escape. The mother's restraint finally cracked. She stepped forward, voice trembling but fierce, as if strength was the only thing holding her upright. "I didn't want him to know," she said, the words scraping out of her. "I just needed time." Her eyes flashed with shame and defiance all at once, daring the night and him to judge her. Snow gathered in her hair and on her lashes, melting into the heat of unshed tears. She straightened her back, lifting her chin. This was her line. She had survived too much to apologize for it now. The boy reached for her coat without looking away from the man. The man rose slowly, the world suddenly rearranged around this small family. He pulled off his coat, the motion deliberate, almost ceremonial, and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. The fabric swallowed the child, heavy with warmth and protection. Then he looked at the mother, really looked at her, and something in his chest broke open. "Santa won't get lost," he said quietly, certainty replacing confusion. "I'll make sure of it." The snow kept falling, but the cold had lost its teeth. On that broken step on Christmas night, the ending she feared loosened its grip, just enough to let hope breathe. Her words hung between them, sharp and exposed, and for a moment it felt like the street itself recoiled. The mother stood rigid, shoulders squared, as if bracing for impact. Admitting it out loud had cost her more than the cold ever could. Her eyes shone, not with weakness, but with a tired fury born of doing everything alone. She refused to look away from him, even as her hands trembled at her sides. The boy sensed the shift and pressed closer to her leg, fingers gripping her coat like an anchor. He didn't fully understand the weight of the moment, only that something important was happening. His breath puffed out in small clouds, and he looked up at the man again, searching his face for a sign, any sign that things would be okay. The man straightened slowly, the night seeming to settle on his shoulders. He reached up and unbuttoned his coat, fingers stiff, movements careful, as if rushing might break what little trust existed. The cold rushed in as he slid it off, but he didn't flinch. He wrapped it around the boy, adjusting it gently, tucking it close the way a parent would. The child sighed at the warmth, leaning instinctively into it. When the man finally looked back at the mother, his eyes were different, no longer distant or confused. Something had shifted deep inside him, something irreversible. "Santa won't get lost," he said, voice low but steady, cutting through the fear that clung to the night. "I'll make sure of it." The snow kept falling, soft and relentless, but the moment held. For the first time that night, the future didn't feel like a closed door. It felt like a breath being taken after nearly drowning. The mother didn't answer right away. She stood there, stunned, as if the ground beneath her had shifted without warning. The promise in his voice scared her more than rejection ever could. Promises had a way of breaking people. Her fingers tightened around her son's hand, torn between instinct and exhaustion. The boy looked up at the man, wrapped in the oversized coat, eyes shining with a fragile belief that felt dangerous to encourage. Snow settled on his lashes. "Santa will come?" he asked quietly, not demanding, just hoping. The question cut through the night like a blade. The man knelt again, meeting the child at eye level, unafraid now. "Yes," he said, firm and simple. "And he'll know exactly where you are." He glanced up at the mother, letting her hear it too. Not magic, not charity, responsibility. Something inside her finally gave way. Her breath shook as she nodded once, tears spilling freely now, freezing on her cheeks. She didn't thank him. She couldn't. She just let herself believe, for one fragile moment, that they might not be alone anymore. The man stood, pulling out his phone, already moving, already changing the course of the night. Snow kept falling, the street still broken, the cold still real. But on that Christmas night, on those cracked steps, a lost address had been found, and so had a way forward.